Well, it's too damn hot to be on a pod freeze. I'm here in Searle's HQ2. It's uncanny because I'm speaking into a Shure microphone. I'm sitting in a Steelcase Leap V2 office chair. I'm looking over longingly at my $800 knockoff Eames chair. And talking into basically the same set of tools, like sitting here at a standing, reclining, sitting desk. I've got a not genuine Microsoft Sculpt natural ergonomic keyboard in front of me, but I've got the very best knockoff that Germany produces. And it's nowhere near good enough because it has a function key right next to the Alt key. So you can't just however many decades of macOS muscle memory of keyboard shortcuts, I've been making this little claw position because the function key is non-operable. You can't bind it to anything. So anyway, that's what's been going on in my life for the last 3 months. What are you up to? It's been a while. Hey, hi. I'm okay. Several of you have emailed asking if I'm okay. And I am. I've been busy. So turns out, accomplishing an unassisted real estate transaction in a foreign language has its challenges. But to be honest, I went on the pod freeze. I started my content hiatus properly. Haven't posted really anything since late April. And to be honest, I haven't missed it. I've missed hearing from folks quite so often. I find myself, instead of posting, just taking a snippet of text that I wish I could post, and then rolling the dice to see which of my friends am I going to text this to via iMessage, which is mechanically the exact same thing. Psychologically, the knock-on effects are a little different. Not that I'm glued to metrics or anything, but you want to see your stuff get out there in front of people. You want to do a good job. You want to polish it, and all that stuff is time-consuming and corrosive, which is why I took a break in the first place. But I'm back. I got lonely, not from the interaction, just from the actual act of sitting at a microphone and being forced to think my thoughts out loud. So here I am. Hello. Hi. My name is Justin. This program is called Breaking Change. Each of these needs a version number. So this is version 54 and a release title. So we'll call it version 54 of the pod, Hot Sleeper, because, as previously mentioned, it is too fucking hot outside. We had so been in Japan since early May, closed on the condo in early June. Then it was just several weeks of a combination of appliance deliveries, furniture deliveries, me trying to figure out how to get Claude to write HomeKit adapters for all of those accessories. Integrating with the local, community. We signed up for a gym and all that stuff. Basically, every day has had 1 to 3 bullshit missions. Yesterday, for example, we need to find somebody to watch the place when we're gone. Not to say it's a condominium. It's mostly on autopilot. The building handles almost everything that matters. But a few things are kind of culturally important, where somebody to clear the mailbox out is an important task. Now, you could do mail forwarding in theory, but the problem with a mailbox in Japan is not that, I guess, I never thought about it this way, but in America, the United States Postal Service is more than happy to take all of the money of having every dickweed who wants to send you advertisements in your mailbox. USPS will just take that, and you can't opt out, right? And they'll just accept the bulk rate for postage and dump it into your mailbox until your mailbox gets full. So if you do a deal with the USPS and you say, hey, I want to forward my mail or whatever, they'll just throw all that crap away, or even just not deliver it to you, right? Because they are the mail source. In Japan, they just pay randos to courier all the flyers and the advertisements. So the proper postal service is actually like just sending real letters, which exist here still. But your mailbox will get full, even if you put a little sign out saying, "Hey, don't put junk in here, please." And on a roughly monthly basis, if you own a property in Japan, you gotta have somebody clearing that mail slot out. So that alone right there, like, just demands a subscription service of some kind. And there are specialized companies that do this, but, obviously most people in Japan, they've got a word for a vacation home, a second residence, besso, but not a lot of people can afford it. Certainly not a lot of people have that kind of time. And in general, if you're going to have a house in Japan that you don't need, it's going to be your deceased parents' home in some economically backwater rural area. And it's going to be falling apart. It's going to be getting marketed on Instagram to a whole bunch of hipsters who don't know what they'll be getting into if they buy that thing for only $5,000, right? I guess you could get, free room and board for the rest of your life for free if you just commit a murder and go to jail, because that's about as much fun as you'd be having if you actually bought one of these houses. They are abandoned old rural traditional buildings in the middle of fucking nowhere, are just left standing because that costs less property tax than tearing them down and having undeveloped land. And so that's how people wind up with these houses that, like, they're constantly in the stance of the building must remain standing so that I don't become a blight on the city and then potentially liable. And so they hire what are called, these empty houses are called akiya. So you have these akiya services who will go and they'll run the water and they'll open and air out the place. They'll check for bugs. They'll get the mail. They'll do all these sorts of services. But it's really designed around this abandoned house concept. And so if I'm just in a brand new luxury condominium and I'm like, I would like 60% of the services that you offer to all of these decrepit, falling apart akiya, please. You'd be surprised how many of these companies are just like, no, we don't do that. Sorry. So it's been challenging to find somebody who, when in the months that we're not here, will come once a month, check the mail, open the, go into the property, run the AC, air out the place a little bit, run the water. That's a big thing here. I don't know is that a thing in the West, where the reputation here is that if you don't run the water in basically every faucet or every drain, if you don't run it at least monthly, the P trap or whatever will fully evaporate underneath. And so you'll just have like airflow, so the seal, I'm not here to like put on a plumbing course, but there's the P trap, which is like a little, semicircle, joint piece of pipe. Fuck, how did I get here? And it's normally filled with water. And when it's filled with water, then the stinky stuff, right? That stinky air, that sewer drain air can't get through because there's always some water just down there, just dicking around back and forth. But if it evaporates completely, then that seal is broken and all of that sewer air kind of comes back up at you. So apparently that's bad and you shouldn't let that happen. I don't know what the consequences are other than it just gets stinky. But like, if no one's there, does that matter? But anyway, everyone has impressed on me how important it is to run water through every drain at least monthly. And that's part of the package. So I guess I'm going to have them do that as well. So we found a company, a local company here in Shizuoka. They're a real estate company. They have this service. I emailed them. I got a phone call and email back almost immediately. Guy was at my house the next day, walking me through the contracts. Very nice fella. I feel like I can trust this man. So then I got all the way to the point of like, okay, so he's going to come back next month. We're going to start the contract and do the sign. And I'll just pay an annual fee and call it. But he needs a physical key. And we have 6 keys, but Becky gets a key, I get a key. The friend who helps us buy this place, who lives in Kawasaki, we gave him a key just in case. Trust him. The 4th key we had to give to the like building security company. I don't know that you have to, but you Japan have to, where it's like maybe not a law, but if you don't do it, it will become a problem. So we gave one to the security company, who then went through this funny ritual with us of proving that it was sealed in such a way, we're going to put this tag over it. You're going to sign this tag. I'm going to wrap it over the key. And then that way, if the key actually goes into the keyhole, your seal will have been broken and you will know that we have used your key. And then you have to fly out again, I suppose in the event of an emergency, to re-sign a new seal onto that key, because they said that they would only use it once, which struck me as bizarre, but also I don't really understand this language very well, so I might have misunderstood. So anyway, that means we're down to 2 keys. Separately and apart from this, I don't like cleaning houses, and I wanted to hire a cleaner, and I was talking to the cleaner, and she said she would also need a key to the residence. Just how it works. And the key, of course, granted, I knew it was a fancy key, like me and Becky's keys, where they have these sensor heads on them. They kind of look like car fob keys back when they still had the pokey outy part. It wasn't just a remote controller for your car. And those sensor fobs, like, they go up against the sensor, so you don't really ever have to put the key dingus in the hole dingus. Sorry, I'm thinking in Japanese, and this is part of why I'm podcasting. Is like, I got to remember this language of English, or else I'm going to be in trouble when I go back home to Orlando. And so this is actually just English language practice time for me now. But all that to say, I'm running out of keys here. I can't give my last 2 keys away and then have no keys left. I got to get some copies. And if you want to get a copy of a key in America, you can literally go to anybody and just say, hey, can you take this thing that ultimately we all have a social contract to understand as being conveying real, true security and safety in our homes, and then spend 30 seconds just making another one that does the exact same thing? Here, unsurprisingly, key technology has continued apace. If you look at this key, if you'd told me, because it's metal, if you'd told me that this was made out of some sort of 3D printed from some metallic powder, such that it was a little bauble that could not be reprinted because the interior bits have all sorts of shapes inside of them that you couldn't possibly construct any other way, I would completely believe you. It looks like a prop from the movie Dune, like some far-flung sci-fi society that still needs to use keys, and then the prop guy has to think up a whole new way for keys to look, right? Because if it just looked like a fucking normal little jigsaw tooth little brass key, just like you have at home, suspension of disbelief would be ruined. This is one of those sort of I could imagine you watching a Nick Cage movie or an Indiana Jones, and this goes into a hole that you found in the side of a pyramid, only for a big door to open afterwards. So I get it. Complicated looking key. So I look into it and I find fortunately, a lot of times, apparently you need permission from the apartment building to actually get the key copied. And had they sprung for the higher level keys from this particular company called Goal, then I would need a security card. It would be a 2FA for your key, for your physical key, that you'd have to also be able to present in order for a copy to be made. On top of, presumably, the permission of your apartment building. Fortunately, I didn't need all that. All I needed was to be told, you can't go to a normal key guy, because if you go to a same day copy thing, that key isn't going to work, because there's they keep saying electronic components inside of this key, which again, you look at it, it's just like a piece of steel. So maybe the electronic components are part of, what is that? You know, any sufficiently advanced technology is indiscernible from magic. I'm back to the magic. This is the way to get into the Mayan temple, you know, and turn it into a UFO so the top spins off and flies away. This magical key that's apparently got electronics in it. Like, how does that charge? I don't know. There's only one authorized reseller in the whole area. And I go there. I rode my bike there yesterday. And of course, for the space age era key, it's in a pretty old part of town. The lock store looks like it's from a movie set. I mean, a movie, you know, like the Doc Brown, the Tinkerer motif or trope in a movie where it's like just an absolute fucking pigsty of a workplace and there's just shit everywhere and it's all dirty and there's a old transistor radio playing a baseball game and all these old clocks, but then also all this other equipment and stuff. And here's this space age key that I go and I bring them and I say, I would like to buy 4 more of these. And they say, that will be over $100, sir. And I said, great. And then she said something about time will elapse before I can get it. And I was like, okay, so like a few days. And she like stared at me and I was like, a few weeks. And she's like, probably a month. So I'm waiting now a month for a couple of keys. And apparently like you have to actually order them from the key maker in the first place. Like they're not even making the fucking keys. At which point, anyway, that was just, you know, an unnecessary 3-hour 4-email excursion yesterday. Very much emblematic of pretty much every day has had something like that. So rather than catch you up on the last 2 months of every single one of these and the play-by-play that I've experienced, I'll just stop there and allow you to fill in with your imagination, you know, what's going on. Otherwise, though, I mean, Condo's gone super smoothly. Yeah, transaction was mostly on autopilot because we entered into contract a year ago and I'd been filling out forms diligently from America for the last many months. Found a Yamada Denki, a appliance and electronic store here in May. I got to know one of the kind of like the managers a little bit and walked through a pretty robust order of all the TV and appliances and all that. You know, everything is just different enough that you can feel thoroughly unconfident in your selections. I wanted to get like an LG OLED, but then those are all sold out nationwide. So then I hemmed and hawed and they said, you should really get a different model. And honest to God, if it hadn't been for AI, I would be so lost in trying to figure this out because like all the other models, like aren't real OLEDs on the market really and or are very, very expensive. But then I found that there's this model called Regza, which is apparently like was a Toshiba sub-brand, but then it and Toshiba were both bought by some Chinese company at some point. But now the Regza brand is really like become a cornerstone of the Japanese like TV market. And so these Regza TVs have the exact same panels as the LG OLEDs, but for a fraction of the price. So that got my attention. And additionally, they've got all these like Japan specific features where you plug in the antenna cable that there's a combination antenna system where you get like one antenna outlet and then you plug it into a television and you get both terrestrial digital signal as well as the 2 different satellite signals that are supported in the country, BS and CS. And so it can take the terrestrial signal and you plug a hard drive into it and it'll like be a DVR, like it's just built into the operating system of the television. And so all of my favorite stations and shows are just always being recorded. I've got TiVo-like functionality and I can rewind whatever. You can even set up individual profiles so that like everyone's favorite shows get recorded. You know how a DVR works. But anyway, this is like space age fucking technology in Japan because like they don't have cable boxes. And so the DVR thing never really caught on and none of the other TV makers offer this sort of thing. So that was just like, you know, I don't know, 1 of 8 appliances. I won't get you started on the afternoon long debate Becky and I had about whether to get a drum style laundry machine or a top loader and the knock on effects of that decision. We went drum style, and I'm still not sure about it, but it seems fine. Furniture was even more fraught. I mean, we wanted to get nice things. We'd never bought nice furniture before because we're just cheap as hell. Like, we were buying IKEA up until 2020. And then in 2021, when we got our Florida house, we like upgraded to Wayfair and Article for almost everything. And that was before the crazy inflation. I don't know if we're certainly never going to buy like a Pottery Barn couch or something, because like, at least in America, and at least with furniture, the more you spend, you're not necessarily scaling up the quality of what you're receiving. So ultimately we decided this would be a good opportunity to shop local. And Shizuoka has a long, history of furniture makers. So we bought from a couple different local companies and felt really good about that. Also got, like this Steelcase Leap that I'm in got used. Look at me being good for the environment. Got a nice solid oak table from a company that apparently makes solid oak tables, and in a very bizarre way of ordering solid oak tables. This desk surface and the whole adjustable dingus where it goes up and down. If you pick out the kind of wood you want, and then the price is the same no matter what size of table you select. So the desk, I keep saying table, I guess I mean desk. The desk that you pick, it could be a third the size of what I'm looking at, which is a monstrosity of a huge fucking desk, and cost me the same as just maxing out the slider in both dimensions. And so as an American, even though this is a very tiny little office room, I was like, well, I can't leave free wood on the table, so of course I'm going to get the biggest fucking desk that you let me have. So I did that, and now I've got a too big desk in my little tiny room, such that my chair barely fits, but I'm happy because it's a lot of wood. So it's a good deal. Probably the single most frustrating thing is that everything is smart and dumb at the same time. Like, all of our devices talk to us. The laundry machine after each load has a button with like a little face and a talking icon, and you tap it and it tells you how the laundry load went. Like, oh, hey, look, everything was jumbled up nicely, and then like the spin cycle went well. Or it's like, oh, stuff was all tangled together, and so drying took a lot longer than it should have. Stuff like that. The fridge talks to me. We have an induction stovetop that talks a lot whenever you leave shit on it, and it detects that like cooking should be done. Or if you turn off the burners but leave it powered on, it really doesn't like that. It's like every 4 minutes it reminds you, hey, turn me off. We got a smart oven, a Helshio from Sharp. Love those because they have like 60 sensors, and you just kind of throw a whole lot of shit onto a tray, and it'll like figure out, okay, this part of the tray has fish and this was potatoes, and it'll sort of like, it'll all just like ding and then pull out, and everything's pretty much perfect. That thing, as you could imagine, talks at you a lot. Every time you adjust, by default anyway, anytime you adjust any of the air conditioners, they talk at you. So there's a lot of talking going on, but in terms of actual automation or useful features, they're all labeled AI, but like most of these apps are terrible. They don't have HomeKit or Matter support. And so one of the first things I did was sit down and use Fable to gin up for me some Homebridge HomeKit accessories, so we could control these things with like, our Siri and Apple Watches and Home app and all that. And that went pretty well. So now I'm the proud owner of a fork of the thing that does the Daikin mini splits, and another one that I haven't released publicly that controls all of our ceiling lights. I got another one that is a customization of the Matter bridge for the SwitchBot which we got these SwitchBot things that like physically, mechanically, with a little motor, open and close all the curtains throughout the place. But yeah, once you get the AC and the lighting and the curtains down, I think those are the table stakes for home automation. So got that all squared away. Yeah. And then we move in. We decided we would have futon instead of traditional Western beds. It's cheaper. It's a different way to try things out. It's not like sleeping on Western beds has gone so great for me in the past that I want to replicate that experience. And so I was like, oh, let's try out sleep how the other half does it. So we got futon and we put them on these wooden platforms called Sunoko, which look a lot like bed frames, but it allows more airflow so that it doesn't get wet. And normally, when you have a futon and you're sleeping on the floor in Japan, it's a tatami floor made out of like bamboo thatch, and so it absorbs all of your moisture. But on a manufactured hardwood floor, it would just stay wet, and then that would become moldy within a few weeks. So you end up with a thing that's like looks like a bed and feels like a bed, but the bed is only 8 centimeters tall, or the mattress rather, and so it's fine. Finding pillows I like hasn't gone well. I've got like 4 pillows and none of them are comfortable. So I just keep adding pillows, but then of course throwing away shit is hard here. So now I don't know what to do. I've got half my closet is just pillow experiments gone wrong. So that's a stressor for sure. Don't get me started on trash collection. I've got a whole drawer in my closet of just metal stuff that I don't know how to get rid of yet. So next time I rent a car, I think I'm just going to have to like drive it to the nearest scrapper. But I got to tell you, when it comes to sleep, all the AC and lighting and curtains and pillows in the world are no match for the fact that my snoring is back, and in a real bad way. If you've been following the arc of this program, you know that I had a surgery last year, got my nose all cleared out, had a moment of bliss because I could finally breathe for the first time. And my snoring eased up. And then within a couple months, I think because I'm no longer able to clear mucus and like just have it naturally drain in, and apparently we're all swallowing mucus all day and we don't think about it, because as soon as that stops working, you fucking notice, because it just feels like you got rocks in the back of your skull. Anyway, so I've got that rocks in the back of my skull feeling most of the time. And of course, when it's time to go to bed, I try to clear it out, do a nasal rinse, do whatever, but I still just basically snore a lot. So like last night, woke up at 2 a.m. Becky had already retreated from the bedroom to her office room, which not incidentally has a bed in it. So she got a bunk bed, sort of like book nook kind of room set up, which I'll leave her to talk about that for herself. But like, it looks great, but I feel terrible, right? Because like she suffers from my snoring, and I just feel guilty, because usually when I'm snoring, I'm actually sleeping really well, relatively. It's not apnea anyway. So anyway, that's what we're up to. What else is going on? We're starting to travel again now that the house is settled down. Went to a baseball game in Fukuoka. Went to a concert. That was pretty fun. While I was traveling, I was at a fancy new gym that had just opened, and I got on the treadmill, and I started off in I want to say Japanese mode, and so I hit 12 on the speed dingus, because 12 kilometers, and so I'm going at 12 kilometers. But then for some reason, like I hit the little, like while I was running, I don't know if I wanted to change some feature, like if I couldn't understand some statistics, I forget why, but I hit the little flag and I changed the flag from Japan to the US. And there, the US, because, and I swear to fucking God, this is a brand new treadmill. And so anytime I see a brand new thing behave in a very suspicious way, it makes me think like, I bet they vibe coded this, because as soon as I hit that fucking flag, the treadmill sped up, and like not a little bit. And I realized it went from 12 kilometers an hour, which is roughly 7 point something, almost 8 miles per hour, It went from about 8 miles an hour to 12 miles an hour because, of course, the US English locale does miles. And so it just took that fucking 12 value and just toggled the unit of measure right there while I'm running. So that that almost threw me off the thing because I was in disbelief. I was like there huffing and puffing, being like, oh my God, my legs, I'm dying. But like, surely this couldn't have been what the software did, goes through my brain as I had. First time in my life, I actually had to hit the emergency thingy. That was cool. Good to know that just because I'm having an awesome time building a lot of software because I have a very keen attention to detail and I'm testing it rigorously, that other people are just still flinging shit makes me happy. I went to a Ruby conference last weekend. It was in Shiga Prefecture, where I used to go to school 20 plus years ago. Good Lord. And so Kansai Ruby Kaigi 2026 was in Otsu, which is a town right on Lake Biwa. Beautiful view. And it's just 1 or 2 stations over from Kyoto, so it's easy enough for folks to get to. A lot of our Ruby friends from Tokyo came, and so it was really a big party. Had a great time. It was good to see everybody. It was a surprising number of people's first time to Shiga, and so it was very weird that I kept welcoming them to my hometown, which felt funny. Went to a couple izakaya. At this point, we've made a lot of good friends in the Japanese Ruby community, and they definitely over-index on sake nerds, Nihonshu experts, and so it had a lot of very, very good sake. Had a lot of weird small plates. There aren't a lot of famous dishes in Shiga Prefecture, but the probably the most famous one that I know of is funazushi, which is an extremely fermented fish. Sushi is a fermented thing traditionally, right? Like you might be familiar that it was like, we got to preserve the fish for winter. And so they would take rice, they would add vinegar to the rice as an agent to kind of like, preserve, or not pickle, but like ferment the fish. And then they put the fish inside, and then that way you could eat the fish throughout the winter safely. Funazushi is like that, but then crossed with that Icelandic thing where they bury the fucking shark and then they exhume the shark, and then you're eating fermented dirt shark as a delicacy. It's somewhere between those two. So yeah, I'd steeled myself by drinking like a full fucking bottle of sake prior to this, but got to try a little funazushi for the first time since I was a college student, and it's like eating rotten fish. And then that rotten fish though is coated in this rice that's sort of like a deformed, almost batter-like substance. It's kind of like mashed potatoes consistency, but it's rice. It's just broken down from the fermentation and the vinegar. And so I was like, wow, this fish part is really disgusting. Let me try some of this rice. And then it was probably the most sour thing that I've ever had. So anyway, as for the conference itself, it was a lot of people talking about their hobbies, a lot of people using AI to accomplish the same kind of shit I'd been doing. Somebody built a pretty nifty heart rate sensor and blood sugar measurement device that he could like attach to his bicycle, as well as a speedometer that looked pretty fucking rad. Another person did like a bunch of home automation with lights and staged lights, and so used Pico Ruby, like a little on-device itty bitty version of Ruby that's popular here, and did a whole like light show in the theater. That was cool. Lots of cool little like kind of hardware hacking stuff, and sort of as predicted, I think the rise of AI has made room more so for the hobbyists, because if you're just writing code to make money, then you're not thinking about the code so much. You're thinking about like what AI tool is going to help me get tickets done fastest. But if you're really in it for the like, I like to program computers part, then now is a wonderful time. because you get a leg up and you get to go even deeper into the things that you love. And that's always typified the Japanese Ruby community anyway. So it's no surprise that like their attendance levels keep rising. Whereas in America, everything I'm hearing about the events there this year has been pretty rough. So I don't know if you want to come to a fun Ruby conference. There's one coming up called Pico Ruby Kaigi. It's got a great little website where you can drag and drop all of the little devices and components onto a breadboard, and then stuff happens on the website. No idea if they coded that by hand or not, but who the fucking cares? So check that out. It's pretty great. But yeah, I think the TLDR, just to close out this overlong, self-indulgent 30-minute plus segment, is that life in Japan continues to feel like New Game Plus. Like everything is more convenient in its own way. Sure, you know, you got these convenience stores on every corner and they sell full fucking fillets of fish, and you can just like you can make yourself a healthy meal for $5. And that's pretty rad. And they've got $1.40 tall boys of, you know, cocktails in a can and beers and stuff. That's also pretty rad. But I don't know, man. Partly it's just like we're setting this stuff up, but partly it's just like there's like a lot of like, you got to do your laundry every day. You got to clean the house every day. You got to, because recycling is at least in this city and in a lot of cities, like the only place to recycle cans and bottles and cardboard is at private shops, like retailers. Like you got to take that shit out pretty much every day, or else you're going to have an embarrassingly large, you know, more than you can hold in your hands amount of cardboard to drop off. If you've got a car, that's one thing, but we're only renting cars as needed. So that means pretty much every day I got to go and drop off bottles and cans. There's just like a lot of steps. Whereas in Orlando, I can just sit on my ass and literal days go by and I've got enough food in stock to just, you know, survive for probably weeks on end. And here, I don't think that I've been able to actually stay home for a full day without having to run at least one errand. So it made me think about live service video games and how if you ever have gotten hooked into one of those, the way that they keep people hooked on them is that they have what are called like daily quests, right? So these are repeatable tasks that you can do maybe up to a certain number of times per day or per week or whatever. There's multiple loops going on. And if you do them every day, then you accrue some sort of points or currency. And if you maintain a streak, that amplifies somehow. But the goal is, on the part of the video game maker, they want to get all of their active users in the game every single day, get as many touches as possible, and then that confers some amount of health in terms of the economy of the game or advertising or however they make their money. But it's referred to by the people who suffer this kind of addiction as doing your dailies. I got to go log into this game that I don't even like anymore and do my dailies. And it just occurred to me yesterday that, like, man, life in Japan is just like, I gotta go do my dailies, gotta go drop out these fucking cans and then take a sweaty ass bike ride to the gym. And then on my way home, take a sweaty ass bike ride to a 4-story building that's not air conditioned, where I've gotta like walk the bike up 3 of the stories because it's a popular fucking bike parking structure. Then I gotta go and, like, you know, hoist the bike up to the second tier of the bike rack because it's too fucking full. And then I gotta walk all the way back down, take a little ticket. Then I gotta go to the store so I can buy a small little thing of meat that I can throw in the curry rice when I get home. And so the cadence of daily life here is painful. There is friction. But just like doing your dailies in a video game, there is a certain zen to the routine where it stops feeling so much like just a nuisance and more like this is what life is, you know? Because failing that, life is just sort of this smear of, well, what was on my screens today, Satan? So anyway, that's life, I suppose. If you got any questions about life here, because I certainly skipped a few parts. Write in. This show has an email address. It is podcast@searles.co. And if you write in, I will read it and write back. In fact, we had friend of the show, Jesse, and his family came to Shizuoka on their vacation. And Becky and I took them out to dinner. And it was great. That could be you. It's like a sweepstakes, except you already won. So just write in podcast@searles.co. And now we'll cover some follow-up. So I'm not sure how you do follow-up on a 3-month gap. I haven't been posting to the blog. I haven't been sharing really any open source. Almost all my new open source is actually closed. I figured part of my hiatus would be just like not being such a fucking exhibitionist. It turns out I really like writing closed source because I don't get any grief. So I've been writing a lot of closed source. I really wonder sometimes when GitHub made private repositories free, how many people just stopped sharing shit. Because for the longest time, the reason that I did open source was I was too cheap to pay GitHub for private repositories. So I was like, well, I guess everything's just open then. That even applies to TestDouble. Like a lot of the repositories at TestDouble that are public are just public because I was too cheap to pay for paid GitHub for the first several years of the company's existence. No, we never put client stuff up, don't get me wrong. I don't think. So anyway, I'm going to call this follow-up, even though you have no clue about it. You might have seen, because I haven't promoted this, again, content hiatus forbade me. I made an app, and I published it to the App Store. It's called Flea Flicker, or in Japanese, Free Frika. And I named it that because the word flea and the word free are the same sound. So for them, it's free. I guess for everyone, it's free. It's a free app. It's a game. And in Japan, they've got this really fun keyboard called the Kana keyboard or the Kana flick keyboard. And they've got all of the main stems of the syllables. So the main syllables like a, ka, sa, ha, and so forth. And then the ends of those syllables like I, U, A, O. So you can do you can tap the ka button and get a ka hiragana character out. Or you can press and hold it and then swipe to the left and get a ki character. Because it starts with the ka and then it modifies it with the E verb. And that keyboard is lovely because it's a perfect little square. And it's much faster because the tap targets are huge compared to the size of the QWERTY keyboard. And yet, most Japanese people still use the QWERTY keyboard because they were raised on it. And so there's this huge divide, first generationally, where young people have grown up in the smartphone era. And so they have this much faster keyboard to use, and they're expert at it. Also, there's a gender divide where more men are in jobs where they're writing, they're typing all day on QWERTY keyboards, using laptops and so forth for their work. And so they tend to just stick with the QWERTY keyboard on their phones as well. And so they're very slowly mashing out. First, they type the Roman characters, and then they have to wait for each of those characters then takes at least 2 hits on the keyboard. And so it's slow and it's error prone. Japanese housewives, because they tend to text more and they tend to be more phone dominant, they've also gotten really good at the Kana keyboard. I've been using the Kana keyboard since 2017 or whatever, because that was one of the big reasons I made Kame-Same, which is like a Japanese flashcard app. And I wanted to use the real keyboard when I was on my phone for the production of Japanese words and so forth. So I'm comfortable with it. But Becky was struggling to get used to it. And as I was here, I kept asking people, and many, mostly men, were completely useless and unable to use the flick keyboard. So I made the game Flea Flicker. I'll put a link in the show notes, I guess, where it's it's a luminous Tetris style vibe where each level there are a certain number of words that are going to drop from the sky, and then you've got to use that flick keyboard to flick out the word correctly. And each correct syllable, it'll like pop up a little bit like a balloon to buy you a little bit more time. But then in later levels, it gets pretty fucking fast. And you get 3 hearts and then you lose. But there are like arcade levels and it loops and it gets really hard. Ultimately, when you do lose, you can share, your KPM, how many kana per minute you're able to type. And it's a fun little game. So check it out. I've got some stuff in the works to make it so you can add custom levels and share an article so you're able to play the words from that article as a practice. So that's I think it's in worldwide, all the app stores. And then if you want to pay me 99 cents, that unlocks an endless mode where you don't have to worry about losing. You can just kind of play forever. I vibe coded the whole thing. I think that was all Codex 5.5 for the most part. I don't think I had Fable access yet when I was writing it, but worked really well. Not very many bugs, not very many issues. Because if you've got one core loop in your software and you're using that software a lot, you don't need that many automated tests. And if the agent fucks something up and you have a keen attention to detail, you will notice it right away. And so as long as you're able to and willing to like work in a tight feedback loop where it does one thing and then you play the fucking game or you use the goddamn app, then it won't be able to deviate too far. It won't be able to go too far down some shit-ass, stupid-headed road. So yeah, I vibe coded it and it worked great. And in fact, it's so weird because, sure, quote unquote, I made this, but I really enjoy it. I play it a lot. Like whenever I got a dead moment, I'm like, I'll play some Flea Flicker. And it just feels weird ostensibly making a game that you yourself find enjoyable. I don't know that I've ever had that experience before. So yeah, go give that a shot. I've been fabling really hard since Fable came out, and then continually with Anthropic threatening to take a Fable. If you don't know, if you're not an AI sicko, Fable is the highest end consumer grade model that Anthropic currently vends. Codex OpenAI has 5.6 out now, and you could argue which one's better. You might look at a Chinese model and you say one of those might have certain virtues versus Fable. And I don't know, Fable's really goddamn good. It's opinionated. It takes big swings. It works in broad, multi-factor ways. It pushes back on me as much as I push back on it, for better or worse. And I found it to be so productive that like I now have 6 different iOS apps in various stages of development. And 4 of them work together in a rather tight way. I'm not going to share all the details of all of them because they're not ready yet. But I might be able to pull off a public test flight before iOS 27 drops. They all depend on 27 because they need the new... Fuck. I was on hiatus during WWDC in June, so if you're not an Apple person, you might not know this, but WWDC this year was really goddamn great. Apple released a ton of new improvements and new APIs for all of their AI shit. And opened the door to a lot of cool features and functionality, like plugging in third-party models directly into their foundation models API. So right now, I'm hoping to get access to private cloud compute so that I don't have to pay anybody anything. But right now, I'm using the Claude package and backing a lot of the stuff with Claude. But frankly, for 3 of the 4 apps, I'm just using foundation models. And the on-device models in this new version, 27 and up, are good enough now. They're not great, but they're good enough now to do a lot of housekeeping that previously would have been a fucking mountain of if-else statements and regular expressions to accomplish. So yeah, if you've got this on-device capability that's effectively free, and you've got an application and you can't think of dozens of ways to make that a little bit better, or if you can't squint and imagine how like 2 or 3 years from now, what you'll be able to accomplish with agents or with models or models plus tools inside of this environment, Like, I think that's a failure of imagination, because like even when I go and sit and write down kind of like relatively perfunctory applications, I'm like, ooh, and if I had like, like Core ML run a training thing through this, I could do this identification in a way better way than anyone's ever done before, etc. and so forth. So I did hit my Fable limit once. I hit it a few days ago, but otherwise I've been on all Fable, and it dropped me down to the Opus, the next tier down, and I thought, I'm so close to being done. I'll just have Opus finish up. And it finished up by fucking up my production database and breaking the build, and all my shit was fucked, and no amount of git resetting unfucked me. So I think I'm going to stick to just only the best. I'll stick with Fable and whatever is better than Fable. Although I have had a lot of good luck with the new GPT 5.6 as well. But Opus, you burnt. We'll talk more about that later on. I think you've been patient enough. I think it's probably time for me to move on. And you know what? I'm typing into my notes application. Aaron wrote me a pun. And I haven't read it yet, but I'm about to. So I'm going to hit the button. I'm going to hit the pun button now. So brace yourself. This pun from Aaron is probably very good, so I'm just going to read it. I have not read this one before. I'm here. All right. Here it goes. I am trying to take advantage of all of my streaming subscriptions, so I guess you could say I'm HBO maxing. You know how you have some sort of autonomic functions in your body? Muscles you can't quite control. Something happened in like my cheekbones. It wasn't a smile, but just like some muscle got stimulated after I read that. It wasn't quite like a repulsive thing. It was like just a resignation. Man, I'm going to read it one more time. I am trying to take advantage of all of my streaming subscriptions, so I guess you could say I'm HBO maxing. Where maxing is, of course, two X's. We have not had very many episodes this season. Forgive me. This is version 54, and we started on 49, so this is the 6th pun, and we're more than halfway through the year. It's going to be going to be easy pun sort maybe at the end of the year here to rejigger all these. But if I look at the list, I'll start in the middle, just do a traditional bisect operation. Right now, number 3, if you think about it, the idea that the Earth rotates around the sun is still revolutionary. I like it. It's classic. It's not newsworthy. Let's say, I feel like this one might be better than that. So number 2, I have nothing but respect for helicopter parents. I can't imagine how hard it is to raise a helicopter in this climate. This one is so good because literally raising a helicopter during global warming is a hard physics problem. I think that I'm going to open and shut. I'm going to say this is just the new number 3 pun. I'm trying to take advantage of all of my streaming subscriptions, so I guess you could say I'm HBO maxing. Well, thank you, Aaron. Hopefully, this isn't the last podcast. Maybe I will do more of these on some kind of cadence. Dear listener, I have not decided necessarily to start newslettering again or writing real big boy blog posts, but I will talk to you from time to time, I think. It's currently where my head's at. I'll probably post more pictures and a take here and there, but I'm not kind of enjoying being useless. So we'll see how that goes. All right. So what comes after the pun? We got. God, there's been so much news to cover. Let's just cherry pick and chat about it. I feel like I really buried the lead with this one, but I'll just say I try to remind, as somebody who helped run a company and who rubbed shoulders with a lot of executive-y folk, I am quick to remind people who haven't that at the top of all of these companies are just normal fucking people. Like executives, directors, fancy ass people. Maybe they worked harder. Maybe they have more of a drive to, strive upward inside of organizations or make more money or do their own thing. All these things can land you the titles and the recognition as being seen as above other people corporately. But at the end of the day, it has not been the case in my experience that the people at the top of the companies are even more articulate, much less more intelligent. They're just there. And because they're there, we listen to them. And that dynamic results in us thinking that these people are smarter than they are, more often than not, especially if they've got a British accent, at which point just lights out. But so it goes with Anthropic, which is sort of like the thinking man's OpenAI in a lot of ways, right? Like they all quit for moral reasons, they think, and then they started their own thing. It is, of course, a more intelligent operation and more strategic insofar as they don't have Sam Altman running it. But this Fable model that I keep referring to, right? If you've been following this, you know it's been fucking stupid. They made a model that, every time they make a model, the Amade, the Dario fella, every time I say Dario, I think of Daria from MTV. I get kind of hung up on that. Anyway, he'll go on and be like, this model's too dangerous for you. Like, this is going to end the world. And he does it in a way that it contributes to the hype cycle of the model itself, right? Like, so, wow, it's so powerful that it could end the world. Surely it can also do my spreadsheets, I guess, is the connection. So when Mythos was deemed to be too hot to handle, they made a separate one called Fable that was like Mythos with fewer security exploit capabilities. And Fable was out, and then there was this whole idea they had at the time, even initially, was we're gonna, like, in a preview basis, let all these people on our very, very subsidized subscription plans, like ya boy, me, and probably you, if you run this shit hot personally, as opposed to using your business tokens. I've been paying $100 or $200 a month for Opus for a bit. So all right, I'm going to Fable for like a week and a half. And so you get it. And then like, it's a goddamn epiphany. You're like, oh shit, he was right. This is pretty good. And all it does is immediately tell you how shitty their other models are. Like, I don't want to use them ever again. And they, I think, didn't foresee this. If you give somebody, hey, like if you're at the Golden fucking Corral, right? Which is famous for having low quality meats, but as much as you care to enjoy of them, and you go in and it's like, hey, this month we're doing a special where we're going to have fucking like imported Wagyu served correctly. And you can have all that as you want, right? And you eat the best beef of your life for a month. Like, when the next month rolls around, are you really going to want to go back to like the chuck roast that was dressed up to look like steaks, slathered in Heinz 57 or whatever the fuck? Probably not. And so when Anthropic says, hey, we're going to give you Fable, but only a taste right? Like some kind of fucking crack dealer as part of your Max subscription. I pretty immediately called bullshit. And then, of course, the Trump administration called bullshit and became a whole like, well, now we're going to have an export control on this thing, so you can't use it outside of America. And then Anthropic's like, our staff is all over. And so they had to just shut off access entirely. They eventually bring it back. And so I've documented here that, let's see, here's a tweet. Oh, no, this is actually about them redeploying it. So their initial plan, after agreeing with the Trump administration for whatever reason, that I don't know how these backroom deals go because they're in the back of the room. But they blog saying, hey, it's going to be included for up to 50% of your weekly usage limits through July 7th. And that was in a post titled Redeploying Fable 5 on June 30th. And then July 7th comes close, and here I'm working feverishly to try to get all of my apps done by July 7th because I know I've touched the flame. I've become fable pilled. I'm not going back to Opus. So I'm working like a dog to like wrap up 4 fucking apps by July 7th. Of course, you don't quite get there, but like I made a lot of progress. Enough of a start that I could at least imagine getting across the finish line. But then, of course, they tweet on July 8th, which is after July 7th, but I suppose it was 2:30 a.m. This might be a Japan localization thing. 2:30 July 8th Japan time, that they're extending access to Claude Fable 5 on all paid plans through July 12th. July 12th. Okay, so that's 5 more fucking days. And now here we are at 2:02 a.m. on July 13th, again, Japan time. We're extending Claude Fable 5 access on all paid plans, as well as keeping Claude Code's weekly rate limits 50% higher through July 19th. So you can use up to 50% of your weekly usage limit on Fable. That weekly rate limit will be 50% higher, not 100% higher, right? So 50% higher, but up to half of that can be Fable. So that means really functionally, you could get 75% of a weekly usage limit with. So then you break out your Abacus or whatever, or you use Fable to try to figure out that fucking tweet. And you got until July 19th to do it. And at this point, it's just like, it's so clear that between not only the absolute, destruction of perceived value that they committed upon their own money-making models in Opus, but also the encroachment of competition from OpenAI, that of course they've got a new model due to, and it'll be better in certain ways, right? And Opus has been disappointing in a lot of ways in 4.7 and 4.8. Competitive threat being what it is, it's like you could probably predict what's going to happen next, right? So July 18th, 11:14 a.m. Japan time. Beginning July 20th, Claude Fable 5 will be included in all Max and Team Premium plans at 50% of limits. So that's where we are. Fable's just part of the Claude subscription now. Like, what a fucking journey that was. I ended up using it more because they were so indecisive. If I run the CC usage terminal command, which since I'm just at the computer anyway, I guess I'll just run it. So CC usage is a homebrew thing that'll go and fetch pricing and then tell you how much you've been spending. Fuck. So since July 2nd, I have spent $7,342 in tokens. I have paid like $150 of a prorated $200 a month plan. This is totally fine, right? This is going to add up and square out just okay. We're not in a bubble. Everything's gonna be fine. No one is gonna want to pay for this shit. at rack rate prices. All right. Well, anyway, Fable, keep bumping, yo. I'm excited for this scary future, but like I'm just gonna make hay while the sun's shining. I'm hoping that I can get these apps across the finish line, and then if shit gets fucked sideways, at least they all use local on-device AI for the most part to accomplish what they need. But they're all language learning apps. I probably should mention they're all. It's a whole Cyril's suite of primarily Japanese, but maybe eventually also other language learning applications. Yeah, it's been what I've been wanting to build for so long, and it's going to be like a 10-year long project. That if I can get like a significant leg up this year, and then all the AI thing goes tits up, I still feel like I'll have gotten out ahead. Of course, God help me if I ever have to actually like open up this code and read it myself. Meanwhile, in AI commentary, Ben Thompson started a whole fucking thing about distillation. Ben Thompson's a smart guy. He's starting to, I don't know, tiptoe more into like the policy side of the spectrum as opposed to just like the straight economics of software in recent months. But here he is like, proposing effectively that we address this boogeyman of distillation. So everyone complains about distillation. What is distillation if not to make like your model a higher alcohol by volume, content? If I am training my model and there is a better model out there available via an API, I can short circuit that training by having it reinforcement learn by quizzing itself against that more powerful model. So it can use the more powerful model as if it was a human, a very smart human, to test its abilities, and by doing so reinforce and train itself. And distillation, because it's different fundamentally than traditional training where you're just taking gobs and gobs and gobs of information and then running it through matrix multiplication so many times that eventually it results in something that kind of sort of masquerades as neurons in a brain. Distillation results in a very different flavor of this, where because it's reinforcement learning, it's actually stronger in certain ways in depending on how apt you were in reinforcing the things you actually want to promulgate and encourage and promote. And so this creates this problem where the frontier models spend a lot of time on the other kind of training that costs a lot of money because you got to find all the data somewhere and then you got to like crunch really fucking hard. Whereas distillation is like you could just sign up for like 1,000 accounts and then just drill that guy's API, also running at a loss, so that you could train your model to be kind of sort of almost as good, but actually maybe even a little bit better in very specific ways. And because it's mostly the Chinese firms that are distilling to catch up, that's why sometimes like you'll see screenshots of GLM or Kimi or whatever identifying as Claude because they learned it from watching you, Dad. There's become a political pressure to outlaw distillation or like somehow prevent them from getting access. But honestly, like, I think what's in the public's best interest for the most part is for these things to become commodities as fast as possible and run locally as soon as possible, which every time the frontier models get better or inference gets cheaper, that all redounds to the same amount of baseline hardware being able to accomplish more, which is like fundamentally not exactly what we expected with how all this hardware was going to shake out and the hardware investments. At a data center level, it's still pretty fucking upside down because those are, as fixed assets go, like hyper optimized for one particular kind of thing, even down to the how do you put the power into it and the cooling and so forth. But from like a perspective of I've got this iPhone here with 12 gigabytes of RAM, when the models get better, the models get better. And so Ben Thompson has a reasonable looking proposal, which I will read. I'll give him 2 paragraphs. To that end, here's an even more interesting question around distillation. Why exactly is it bad? After all, what are large language models but the distillation of all of the knowledge on the open internet, scraped by the same frontier labs? I inserted the word same, full disclosure, and distilled into the models that are themselves being distilled. Who is exactly being wronged here? And that's where, I think the moral argument breaks down. Because if you're OpenAI or Grok or Anthropic and you're claiming distillation some sort of cardinal sin, right? Some sort of violation of they'll say terms of service, but really if they scraped the whole internet, they were violating terms of service left and right. So why is that okay and distillation's bad? Ben continues, in fact, this paradox is the solution. I believe that open weight models are good for innovation, and per the above, I think that labs on the frontier will be fine. But it's a problem to be dependent on China. The US should pass a law that 1, makes explicit that collecting data for the training models is fair use, and 2, bars terms of service that forbid distillation for US companies at a minimum. Stopping distillation, which is literally just querying the API, is nearly impossible. The US should go the other way and lean into a new copyright policy that both indemnifies the labs and also guarantees that what they learned fuels further innovation for everyone else. I don't know how I feel about that bit. I'm not a huge cheerleader for what the labs did was theft. Because if I read 1 million books, my inability to read 1 million books is the only reason that I haven't, myself manually deep learned all of human history. If I had a brain that was as fast as a gajillion NVIDIA GPUs and I could read a gajillion books, then it's the same thing, just happening at scale and robotically. And so I suppose they're not paying for the books typically. I suppose it is a term of service thing, but if it's on the public internet, right? And this is the kind of argument we get back and forth in. And I think it being ambiguous right now is probably best because it's resulting in licensing deals happening. Some publishers are at least able to extract some money. And I think it keeps the frontier labs on their toes a little bit. But if you were just to straight up indemnify it, then I think that what appears flagrant today will look pedestrian in comparison to when we see the extent to which they will go and find more data and aggressively hoover it up. I'm not looking forward to the day when your Tesla and every camera and every microphone is just picking up every single conversation, because that is virgin non-AI generated content to train on, right? That happens probably regardless of whether that indemnification actually occurs. But if we literally just say it is straight up okay to train on whatever the fuck with no repercussions, I don't know. I don't love that. One has to think that there'd be some sort of opt-out. But anyway, what's nice about policy proposals is that the status quo tends to win out. And so it'll never go anywhere, especially not right now where you can't even fucking build a data center because AI has such a terrible reputation. I cannot imagine Congress passing anything that's going to make life easier for any of these motherfuckers anytime soon. But who needs Congress when you've got Apple? So Apple sued OpenAI. They did the thing where they wrote a long lawsuit that reads like a tabloid. It does 2 tabloidy things. One, it is extremely juicy and editorial in its proclamation. So it got this narrative walkout of beat by beat readout of all of the different things that happened. It is also tabloid-like in what it doesn't say, which is basically what they allege is that OpenAI has been stealing trade secrets. And the way that they have been doing it, primarily, is hiring Apple employees and then both at interviews, asking openly for proprietary Apple information or asking for samples or demos or even hardware prototypes under the guise of show and tell that that Apple did not authorize necessarily be shared. They are alleging that certain employees, one former employee, like gets onto the network and it literally after leaving the company takes his laptop with him and then still has network access, downloads a bunch of documents, and then presumably hands those to OpenAI. It goes all the way to the top with Tang Tam, like, who's the chief hardware officer at OpenAI, actively soliciting this. They've hired 400 people. It's tabloid-like in that way, just like it is salacious, I should say, not tabloid-like. This is juicy, right? Trade secrets, that stuff is hard to litigate. They might win, they might lose, but I think that like if they can get to court and they get to discovery, that alone will be the win that Apple wants, because it will probably air a lot of OpenAI's very dirty laundry right as OpenAI wants to IPO. And just the cloud over the hardware that they might build could be so dramatic that eventually you get institutional investor pressure just to like let that horse lie, which from Apple's perspective keeps their lane wide open. So it's a low risk suit from Apple, unless Discovery would turn up something on their end that would be particularly damning. But it's hard not to see the asymmetry here. One quote from the Spyglass report, it's MG Sigler's website. Avoiding the dreaded walkout. Quote, Apple alleges that OpenAI coached departing Apple employees on how to evade Apple's security procedures to reduce the chance that their alleged trade secret theft would be caught. The complaint claims that OpenAI circulated an internal Apple document bearing a, quote, need-to-know designation to new hires with details on how to avoid the dreaded walkout, which would immediately remove them from Apple after giving notice, instead of letting them continue to work for a typical 2 weeks, which would then allow them more time to access Apple's confidential information. Another quote, furthermore, Apple says a candidate began screenshotting and downloading files related to a highly confidential Apple project hours before interviewing with Tan, who then solicited more information about that same project once the interview started. This became an established pattern, Apple says. Now, if I'm the OpenAI dude, if I'm Tang Tan, I might feel like hot shit because I almost got John Turnus's job as head of hardware a few years ago, but I didn't, so I'm salty. I might feel like hot shit because like I'm buds with Johnny Ive, and after him and Sam Altman bro down in that disgusting video a year ago in San Francisco, I come out on top as operationally like the showrunner of that partnership and of that acquisition. I probably am sitting on a fortune of stock. Do I get so confident that I could be interviewing somebody who actively works at Apple? They are still an employee, and so brazenly ask them for stuff that we both know they shouldn't be sharing, that they would get in big trouble if it came to light that they share. What if, God forbid, you get that information and then you don't give them a fucking offer letter? Are you going to give an offer letter to every single person you interview? What if he's a goddamn dolt, but he gave you the goods, right? Like, well, you failed the technical interview, but your screenshots were real choice. So we feel now like actually you've got dirt on us, and so we're going to give you that offer letter, because if you go and cry to Uncle Tim about this, he's going to find out about like what we be up to. Right? This is a fucking weird dynamic. So unless the plan was hire literally anybody with a fucking pulse, or hire anybody who turns up good dirt on the company, which at that point now you've got this selection bias, right? For like, I'm only hiring the most unsavory individuals in this organization, which, you know, I mean, like, I like to compare organizations to organisms. Like, if that's all they did, then they kind of lance to boil, right? They're a leech that's sucking the bad blood out of the Apple host organism, right? Because like if you show up to this interview and you refuse to give them any special access, does that mean you fail the interview? Does that mean, like, obviously it's going to count against you, right? Because they want people who are there to play ball. One presumes. You say that like just on the assumption, right? Like, if I was in that situation, I would feel uncomfortable. And I would keep track of what they asked. And I would probably keep copies of their emails. And then I would probably, like, if I valued my job and my freedom, I would probably turn all that over to Apple Legal. So if you've hired 400 people, even if, like, 90% of them just like give docs away and like comply with this stuff, right? Like, that's still another fucking 40 people who probably had a very similar story replete with, an evidentiary chain of custody of like emails and other content soliciting this stuff. So I've got a feeling Apple is on sure footing that this kind of chickenry was like actually happening. And that's to say nothing of the obvious, Computer Fraud and Abuse Act stuff, where it's like they're actually conspiring to yank stuff that doesn't belong to them off of Apple servers, which is this, at that point, they got them dead to rights, at least the individuals. Now, like, it's possible everyone at OpenAI just like claims, some kind of plausible deniability that they didn't know that was happening. But the thing about this that just blows my mind, they put this out to get a maximum amount of attention. They put this out as an editorial, and then they just left it to the rest of us to connect the dots that, like, this is Johnny Ive, right? Like, he's maybe not in it day to day, but these are all of his lieutenants doing this shit. And you look at Johnny Ive and he looks not so healthy anymore. He looks like he's lost a beat. He's fatter, doesn't look spry, I wouldn't say. He's not in there day to day. Is he out to lunch? Is he just doing his own thing? He built that, like, farcical looking Ferrari electric. He's friends with Laurene Powell Jobs. That's a problem, You can't have Laurene Powell Jobs go to jail if you're Apple. That would be awkward. Steve wouldn't like that. But Steve would absolutely go thermonuclear, in his own words. Probably against Johnny Ive. He was a real loyal motherfucker until the minute you left his fucking company. So why did they pull the punch? Was it just the Laurene Powell Jobs relationship? I mean, she was an investor in IO. Are they afraid of, like, going a little bit too close to that third rail? Supposedly she was at the most recent Apple event. So they're trying to maintain and nurture that relationship. Supposedly, like, one assumes they talked to her before releasing this shit because she is a principal, even though she's not named in the suit, and neither is Ive. But man, I so badly want this to just go the absolute worst way, where what is justice? I don't know, but like if Discovery turns up a lot of ridiculous shit and Johnny Ive is implicated, like, that's I don't know if, like, after that second Social Network movie that Sorkin's making, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of appetite for more of this kind of like palace intrigue tech drama biopic film. But, like, that sounds like a good one. Stay tuned. That's gonna be a slow burn. It's gonna take a while. So anyway, Gurman's out. They, while we're talking about Apple, this is all old news. This is all a couple weeks old, I realize. Sorry for the old news, everybody. I wasn't online. Supposedly the M6 is coming out. The base M6 Mac processor. It'll show up in The devices that seem to get updated every time there's a rev of that. So I would assume we're going to see an M6 MacBook Air next year, a M6 base MacBook Pro, M6 iPad Pro. But they're skipping M6 Pro and Max and Ultra and all that jazz and going straight to M7 Pro. Gurman writes, the reason for this break with tradition, AI. Apple had been planning major neural processing upgrades for the M7 family and ultimately decided those improvements were important enough to justify accelerating the next generation rather than completing the M6 lineup. Those changes go into high gear with the M7 Ultra. I'm told the processor dramatically upgrades AI performance, bringing it closer to the class of dedicated AI accelerators, such as NVIDIA Corp's Blackwell. I suspect that the reason that the M7 Ultra in particular, apart from just having a better neural processor or, AI accelerator, whatever you want to call it, I suspect that the reason the M7 Ultra is so attractive is because that is, according to a rumor we heard like 4 years ago about the use of chiplets and how Apple packages their M series of large package die chips. I'll just keep throwing nouns at the microphone until something sticks. Chiplets would allow them to have multiple prints of smaller die processors that are then packaged up together through interchange. And there's some loss or some latency that happens for each of the chiplets that you place in there. But AMD has been doing this to kind of accomplish what it has in its whole lineup of APUs and its Zen architecture, as well as like the Ryzen CPUs and all that. So it's been using chiplets for a long time. And Cerrucci was out like 4 years ago saying it was interesting, and that's probably where things are going. And that would have been the time that M7 was getting taped out, and there was or not taped out, but rather like designed. And there was a rumor that was some anonymous feedback into one of the Apple podcasts or another that was basically saying like Apple has no plans through the M7 of doing anything that would like allow an external GPU, but that the M7 was going to be like chiplet-tastic. So if you hear that the M7 Ultra is really, really good at AI, what I suspect that means is that they're going to probably it's because it's more plug and play. Probably instead of it just being, two M7 Maxes glued together, it's probably going to be, here's what you probably need in terms of graphics processing and video pipeline. Beyond a certain point, you don't need 16 8K pipes for video processing, likely. Instead of just doubling it, if you could keep the CPU and GPU cores kind of, to what one might conceivably need, and then just max out the rest of these little chiplets with the neural stuff, that's how you probably wind up with a ridiculously powerful something that could compete with Blackwell, NVIDIA's not latest, but I think latest of the ones that are on sale architectures. 1.5 terabytes. So that Gurman continues, that new Ultra is designed to support as much as 1.5 terabytes of memory, roughly double the capacity planned for the M5 Ultra. Though whether Apple ultimately offers that configuration will depend on the state of the industry. Widespread memory chip shortages have made the components harder to find and more expensive, which is an understatement. That's a lot of memory. By that point, we will probably not be completely out the other end of the crisis. So 1.5 terabytes of RAM, high bandwidth memory, probably going to cost you, I don't even want to say it out loud, like $20,000, $25,000 at Apple upgrade pricing. There's one other throwaway thing in this newsletter. The other, dubbed B632, referring to the other Pencil model, is a refreshed version of the Apple Pencil Pro that arrived for the first time in 2024 alongside the M4 iPad Pro overhaul. The timing makes sense given that Apple traditionally likes to roll out new pencils around the time it makes fresh iPad models. So in there somewhere is something about a new iPad. I'm just going to go on the record and say, I bet you anything that this new Pencil Pro works on the new touchscreen Macs as well. If you get a MacBook with a touchscreen, drawing on it with a pencil seems like a workflow that pros would want. Now, from an angle perspective, it's probably not going to have the screen open up to a full 180 degrees or whatever. It's probably not going to be something you want to work in all day, every day. But I would be shocked if they're selling a new pencil and they're not like, hey, yeah, this works on your Mac as well. Well, we'll see. You just continuing the more grounded Apple news, right? Like, so Public Beta came out. Public Beta 1 came out a couple weeks ago. Public Beta 2 just landed while I was recording this here on Thursday, July 23rd, Japan time. And you can go install iOS 27, iPad OS 27, all the 27s, Mac OS Golden Gate 27. And I've been using all the betas for a while now across my various devices. And I've got some takes. Probably the thing that I wanted most, and the thing that no one else is going to care about, is trying to use a Maps application in anything except for the local target language is really frustrating, because what you see in the app and what you see on signs doesn't comport with each other. So like when I look at a sign, it might have 3 Chinese kanji characters on it. But then when I look at the app, it's like, so much text in Roman characters that it overflows a line. So I have to very carefully parse it. And whereas at a glance, if I was just like, okay, those kanji match those kanji, even if you don't speak the language, it's like a lot faster. And there was one beta, or there was one announcement like 3 WWDCs ago where they said, oh yeah, and we're going to let you change the language of the Maps application separate and apart from the system language. And they didn't ship it. And now that everything, if anything, everything's going the opposite direction now, which is Siri has to be the same language as the system language for Apple Intelligence to ever enable at all. And now when you change your Siri language, it changes it on all of your devices behind the scenes. So that means all of your devices then, if you want to use Apple Intelligence, have to be on the system language that you use Siri with, which for me is has been very often Japanese system language with English language Siri. And now I'm on English, which means my maps are back to fucking terrible English maps. And unfortunately, they are still locked to the system language and I can't change it. So that means every time I rent a car or drive, I have to change my system language, let my phone reboot, and then if I want to drive safely, and be able to at a glance know whether I need to turn or not, or which highway to go on, or which route to take. So that's fucking stupid, and they should fix that. My Mac OS 27 Golden Gate review is Tahoe was fine, and this one's also fine. I don't know, man. If I looked closely at the border radius of the corners of the windows, I would probably notice it, but it's fine. If you open Spotlight, because if you don't use one of the Spotlight alternatives, it's black now and branded like the new Siri. Otherwise, there's just not a lot to say. The new Siri mostly works. It's kind of like a very simple one-shotty AI chatbot now. It can do multi-step conversations, but you wouldn't have it work for very long on any particular thing. It'll search the web. You can ask a clarifying question. You can have it dig into your whatever shit shows up on the index of whatever the device has. And for me, I use messages. I use mail. I use mostly Apple stock apps. It's just the stuff that I ask it. The stuff that I've trained myself into asking it is the more mundane. Send a text to Becky. Add a reminder that does this. Set a timer that does this. The holy trinity of 3 things that we could all traditionally trust Siri with. And I just have not yet worked up the creativity to go much beyond that. So when I've forced myself to play with new Siri as if it was a chatbot, I'm usually typing at it. And there I was like, yeah, this is better than the free mode of ChatGPT and Claude, which if you're wondering why ChatGPT just released a 1.5 gigabyte version of their app and called it ChatGPT when it was really just their former Codex app, it's probably because in September, the free version of ChatGPT is going to look a lot worse than just pressing the side button on your iPhone. Like, people, I think, underestimate how bad of an experience the free tier of ChatGPT is. So even if it was really good, though, like, it's not going to dig through your iMessages. It's probably not going to be set up to dig through your email if you're a consumer. You know, only if you're a sicko are you going to set up all that Gmail integration and other things. And that means, like, the consumer route between Google Gemini on Android and what Apple's doing is working out exactly as predicted 2 years ago, right? Basically, like, the OpenAI, now Anthropic, they had a limited runway. We thought it would be a year, turned out to take Apple longer, 2 years, to figure out how to make money, figure out what you do before your lunch gets ate. And watching WWDC, I felt like we were watching, like, half the economy get Sherlocked. Because, like, indeed, like, if you eliminate all non-programming, non-work related, I gotta build a spreadsheet kind of uses of AI, the ones that work, the ones that both work and that people use, which might be literally just programming and people with software brain who think that they, like, will save time by using AI to do the spreadsheet for them. That island of, like, yes, programming computers automatedly is a high value thing, but it's also the audience are the people who have the most means to shop around and to hack it up. And they're going to be the ones figuring out ways to either run other models, get by with a slightly lower expense model, figure out local LLMs the minute that that's available. So you're going to get pinched on that side. And on the consumer side are just the dummies who will use whatever. And if you've got, like, the brand power and the recognition or whatever, like, you're getting eaten on that side because, like, the path of least resistance is people keep using their phones or start using their phones again. And ChatGPT just becomes a thing we used for a few years as this bridge. So if it hadn't been for the SpaceX IPO, I'd be like, man, these guys are pretty fucked. But then the SpaceX IPO fucking blows up and now Elon's a trillionaire and that company doesn't make any goddamn sense. So I'm in, like, year 10 of waiting for the other shoe to drop on this economy. But everyone's got such a healthy imagination, I guess, on Wall Street that reality continues to not penetrate the fundamental dynamics here. So we'll see how it goes. I would much rather be Apple than OpenAI or Anthropic. And I would much rather hold stock in Apple if I had to pick. This does not constitute financial advice. Oh yeah, speaking of languages though, fuck me, man. Like, I am sure if I tell English language Siri, hey, call Jorge, right? Or send a message to Thomas Fuchs, right? It's going to know how to spell those names, even if I pronounce them in, like, the accented way if I say Santiago instead of Santiago, right? Like, it's going to figure that out, is my guess. But God forbid I say, hey, send a message to Hatsumi. And, like, it will never figure that out. It just won't. Hatsumi, extremely common name. I say Keiko, probably wouldn't get that either. I say Chisato, fucking forget about it. Just not going to happen. If I say, like, give me driving directions to, Shizuoka, it will never get that. It does not know what is a Shizuoka. I've got no fucking clue. If I say any place name, any person name in Japan whatsoever to English language Siri, it will fucking bite it every single time. And I don't get it. Like, other than there are more, people in America with Mexican names or with, like, excuse me, Spanish language names or other like Indo-European languages. But like beyond that, like I don't know what the fuck it is. Like, honestly, when Siri, and I'm on an iPhone 17 Pro, so I've got the new Siri and everything, right? I successfully got through the wait list. I was like, cool, this is a real fucking LLM. It can hear me. It knows more than one language. Something, I don't know what, I don't know how, is still getting in the way of its ability to interpret like basic words in other languages. It's like it's all being coerced through some sort of dictation pipeline that is like, no, English only. But like that just breaks down even something so fundamental as like the name of a place. And if I pronounce something in like a really garbled way, sometimes it can come through, but like when it tries to read it back to you, it just sounds ridiculous. I don't know. I could go on, but it just seems to me like if Siri has gotten so much better, and if Siri is basically a distilled or a customized version of Gemini, and Gemini can do this shit night and day easily, like what is it in their software pipeline exactly that makes it so difficult for these like language models to be able to deal with more than one language? Absolutely bizarre. Two other beta things. One, this wasn't covered very much, but I want to call it out because like it's pretty fucking rad. If you're on macOS Golden Gate 27 and you open your terminal and you hit FM, you will get an LLM, like a foundation models interface. You can interact with the foundation models just from the CLI. That means that you can incorporate it into shell scripts. And if you type FM space chat, it will open something that looks a lot like a Claude code kind of thing, a terminal UI. And this is just a little baby. It doesn't have a lot of features. It can probably be hacked together to become an endpoint in, I don't know, like I haven't been looking or following this, but like Pi or other open, harnesses, and probably hook into FM. And you wouldn't want to because it's not that good yet. But then you just imagine like, how far are we, right? If Apple pulls off, call it a $6,000 M8 Max, and you've got that FM CLI available, right? And it's compatible with every other LLM in terms of how it's an endpoint or whatever. You're able to self-host a coding harness. Like, you look at the tokens per second, you look at the quality, like, eventually we're going to reach a point where this is like good enough for that purpose. And if you look at the actuarial tables for when all these data centers are supposed to flip from red to black, I don't like that timeline, right? So I'm rooting for Apple just because I don't like having to pay subscriptions. And I like while LLMs are not deterministic, the fact that like you can run the same thing over and over again locally and control all the hardware involved, it definitely puts me at ease a little bit. I just cycle through a few of these other news items and then we'll move on and start wrapping up. NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, wonder if I can say text Jensen Huang to Siri and whether it would work. He was recently in Tokyo at a Sega arcade in Akihabara, and he appeared along Sega president Shoichiro Irimajidi and current CEO Haruki Satomi and COO, as well as Yu Suzuki, who made Virtua Fighter and Shenmue. And all I'll say is it's kind of amazing. Apparently, in the mid-90s, I'll just read this a little. Notably, NVIDIA signed a lucrative deal in the mid-90s to supply 3D technology for Sega's upcoming Dreamcast console, but due to poor technical decisions, it failed to deliver, putting the young NVIDIA in financial peril. However, in a pivotal moment, Sega's president, Shoichiro Irimajidi, I've never heard his name before, saw potential in, I wonder how Siri pronounces that, saw potential in NVIDIA and agreed to invest $5 million in the company, which Huang later reflected and had kept it afloat. $5 million was a big amount of money for Sega at the time, Huang said last year. I told him that if they invested that money in us, it was likely to be lost. But if they didn't invest that money, we would be out of business and have no chance. He thought about it for a couple of days and said, we'll do it. He added, if he had kept that $5 million investment, it would probably be worth about $1 trillion today. Because the moment we went public, they sold it for $300 million because they thought that it was a miracle. How rad is that? And how fucked up is it? Like, Sega could be one of the biggest companies on the planet if only they'd hodled NVIDIA, which never actually made it into any of their products. This is absolutely fucking bizarre. Also in Japan news, this is only true of online games, and they say it doesn't count like mobile or console or PC games, but like, I don't know, these people are playing these games on something. So it's hard to say exactly what this applies to. But the Japan Online Game Association has been conducting surveys with online game developers since 2004 and has now published its 22nd annual report, which finds that 100% of online game companies surveyed said they used generative AI tools. This is newsworthy in only so far as like video game players seem to fucking hate AI. And I think they hate it most when it's like artwork and story and voice acting, like the stuff that they encounter as being the game. They seem to care a lot less if it's used as a fundamental tool for like source code generation. That seems like benign. One assumes it's because programmers make a lot of money and starving artists are everywhere. But like when you look at like the cost basis in programming, in game development, very few games have more than a handful of programmers on them because the engines do so much work for you. It's really like the cost is in the artist, right? So hearing that 100% of online game companies surveyed say they use generative AI tools is like really surprising, just because most people aren't willing to admit it. Although I suppose there's a certain like layer of anonymity here. What's culturally interesting is that like Google Gemini continues to be far more popular. 94% of the respondents said that their company used Google Gemini. Other responses, Claude 84% and GitHub Copilot 76%. So it's clear, like, I don't know why. I have been told by my Japanese friends that the reason is, and I got a lot of this at the Kansai Ruby Kaigi as well. I'd ask everyone, hey, are you using AI? Are you mostly using AI? And like people mostly said, yeah, I'm totally cooked. But they were hacking together plans and service providers that were different from what analogous programmers in the US would have done, simply because the yen is so cheap that a $200 Claude Code Max plan is like obscenely expensive. You know, like programmers here might make $30,000 to $40,000 a year. Actually, now that I think about it, probably significantly less than that, given how much the yen has depreciated. So to say that you're going to spend over 10% of your earnings, right? Like that's 3,000 some amount of dollars a year. Excuse me. Oh, I guess it would be 2,000. I was doing too much yen math in my head, but like, yeah, like that's still an absurd amount of money. So most people are getting by on either very, very cheap plans or Google Gemini, which has like a pretty generous free tier, it turns out. So interesting. PlayStation got in big trouble. They announced the end of disc games. They're not going to make hardware discs anymore. Obviously, like they say, it starts in January 2028. The other thing that probably starts in January 2028 is like the run-up, if not release, of the PlayStation 6, which one can pretty safely presume is not going to have a disc drive. But if they like said that as part of the announcement for the PlayStation 6, hey, it doesn't have a disc drive, everyone would go fucking ape shit. So they're just doing it now. But like video game fans, as previously mentioned, are not like the smartest people. And so they're taking this on its face as being some sort of shot across the bow against like discs per se. And like, again, Sony's having the fight when they want to have it, when like they've got basically nothing for sale. They've got no games really coming out, and they're in a little bit of a lull, and they've got this hardware coming, and they were able to dump this on a Friday before really bad Xbox news was going to come out. So they picked a really choice time to drop it. But like, it just, I struggle to get worked up about physical media. Like, Yeah, it was cool when I could go and buy a Nintendo DS game and trade it in and make some amount of money back, and that the card was the game and that the card held my save games. Like, that was all pretty cool. But for so long now, buying a disc of a game is, first of all, the console doesn't play it. The console just uses it as an install medium, just like if it had downloaded it. So you're not like playing the game on the disc. You're waiting for it to install, and then it installs. And then it's not like, that's not the game anymore. That was the game maybe when it got cert a month prior to like launch. The game has basically been fully replaced with new assets that you had to download in the form of patches, and patches upon patches upon patches. And so, like, what's on the disc, right? And then on top of it, like, most of these things aren't just basically unplayable trash on a disc if you put them into one of these gaming consoles. Like, in the imagined offline world of some sort of fucking apocalypse, and you've got a PlayStation 5 and you've got some disc, and you plug it in, the most likely thing that's going to happen is the disc won't play because your PlayStation 5 firmware isn't high enough for whatever the disc release version is. And then you're fucked because you don't have internet, right? So in reality, like, the likelihood that like the PlayStation firmware is going to agree with like whatever the expectation of the disc is very low. Then you install the fucking disc, and then you play it and you realize, oh, this is broken and this is just shitty. And that's because all games ship broken now. They just do just good enough to get cert or certified for release. So they print the discs, which really only exist as tokens of ownership. And if you're content with the shittiest possible version of the game and the firmware stuff works out, yes, in your bunker, you could theoretically play this game. And now add to it that almost every game has umpteen back-end live service components that only really work when some server is turned on. Even single-player games that don't advertise themselves as online only will have back-end services or telemetry or other shit going on. And if those servers turned off, unbeknownst to the players who bought the game, I'm sure, if those servers were to ever turn off or become like, unavailable, the quality of the game would degrade or straight up break. Like, what's the merit of a Destiny 2 disc, right now when the Destiny 2 servers inevitably turn off? So when people on the internet got so fucking mad about this, they're like fighting the last war. I think it's just kind of like one last cry for like a bygone era. It was like, that ended a decade ago, man. So it's hard for me to get worked up about it. Life is just more convenient now in a lot of ways. And if you live someplace with bad internet, then move. I don't know, man. I get it. I have to put up with bad internet in both of my two houses now. But that's a story for another day. Anyway, because of the announcement, there's been a run on physical media, even here in Japan. So people are buying up all the shit that would otherwise make them nostalgic. So I went to my local Hard Off. It's the hardware version or hardware floor at Brand Off, which is a used goods store. Just seeing a sign that just says Hard Off and then not finding any pornography was immediately disappointing. So I went to Hard Off and started like going through what few games they had left. And wanted to find something old. I wanted to find something that I wouldn't find in America. I wanted to find something not necessarily that I could play, but would be a good desk tchotchke. And so I got a copy of Super Mario Brothers 2 for the Famicom Disk System. I never owned a Famicom Disk System, but it was an expansion to the Famicom, the family computer in the 80s. And it had kind of Nintendo's version of floppy diskettes you could put in there and play the game. And what was cool about them was they came with two sides, and very few of the games actually used both sides. And so it even says right on there, you open the disc up, It says there's side A has the game, and then B is blank. Like you can write it in, and underneath it says because there's no software on side B, you can go and install other software onto it. And so back in the 80s, Nintendo actually operated. And if you ever used like Nintendo DS Street Pass, this is going to sound familiar. Nintendo actually operated kiosks throughout the country where you could go to the kiosk and it would like insert your Famicom disc, and they sold games. Like you could pick from a menu of like, these are the games that are on here, and hit the button and pay however much yen, and it would write that game to that disc for you. That's how the games got written to the Famicom disk system. So you could have discs, and then like without buying new hardware, actually, in a sense, that's the first downloadable content, I guess. So I bought a copy of Super Mario Brothers 2, which of course in America is known as the Lost Levels. And is really just kind of like a level pack for the original Mario Brothers more than a sequel. So anyway, that was neat. Xbox drops 5 studios, fires thousands of people after, cutting 9,000 last year. Microsoft across the board with a lot of Xbox, hit pretty hard. They've got thousands more announced layoffs that haven't happened yet, which is probably really great for morale, as everyone's just waiting for the other shoe to drop. The 5 affected studios, Double Fine, who made Psychonauts, Compulsion, who made South of Midnight, Ninja Theory, which did the Shenmue's Sacrifice games, Undead Labs, that did State of Decay. A lot of these just had trailers come out like 2 months ago. And then the Dishonored studio, Arcane Lyon. Arcane Austin was already closed last year, but Arcane Lyon now. Xbox is in a season of divestment. Several of these are in talks to be acquired by somebody else or take on outside funding so that they could operate independently. I believe Double Fine and Compulsion already have announced that they're going independent and have been given their IP back from Microsoft. Double Fine for sure is taking on investment from Microsoft just so they have enough runway to like not go under immediately, because they just released both the main things they were working on in the kind of art piece Keeper, and then the kind of the design and battle game that nobody asked for in Kiln, where you can design a clay pot and then based on the shape of the clay pot, your powers change. I don't know, man. I don't know if Double Fine is a kid who's going to be able to swim on his own when you throw him in the deep end at this point. Also, they like all their employees live in San fucking Francisco. Like there's a reason so many great games these days are coming out of Eastern Europe, because it's the only place on earth where, other than Japan, like cost of living and labor is low enough to be able to tolerate the like declining AAA video game business. So bummer. In somehow making this sound like bad news, Microsoft announced a whole lot of Fallout games all of a sudden, including that Obsidian's making a new Fallout game headed by Josh Sawyer in charge of design, but like in the same sentence, because they were working on an Avowed sequel, which is what we talked about in the program. Good game. I enjoyed it. I think that Obsidian has no business making an Avowed sequel. If the goal is to make money, though, they should be making more Fallout games. And so that's what they're doing. But of course, like, it's leaving a bad taste in everyone's mouth, which is understandable. And then no one knows for sure what the story is, but id Software, which is like, they made Doom and Quake and then Doom and then Doom and then Doom. And they recently came out with a brand new game called Doom, and it's pretty good. But like, they also make Doom Tech, or id Tech rather. And id Tech is the engine that runs Indiana Jones, as well as all the other Machine games, Wolfenstein games and stuff. And it's considered to be like quite an achievement, especially when you look at Unreal Engine 5 and a lot of the things that it sucks at. Like, it's hard in Unreal to get like performance and features, both working without a hitch. Whereas id Tech scales down real low, real well, and scales up real high with like just tremendous image quality. So unfortunately, One of the software developers at id Software has claimed that they've been relegated to support studio size as 136, or a majority of its staff have been laid off. There have been reports that only one person who knows anything about how the actual underlying id Tech engine works is left. Microsoft has disputed this, and they've also said, like, hey, the size of the studio now is around what it was when they released Doom 2016, and that, like, you know, they're hand waving at a lot of this as like COVID era overhiring bloat, and I'm sure there's some of that. There's also over acquisition bloat in that they've got to try to make right on the $75 billion Activision acquisition. Anyway, Xbox is a mess. They still don't know how to run it. So the rumor is they're going to stop running it and spin it off or sell it. And it's when you try to imagine who would buy Xbox, you'd have to have either more money than sense or a strategic reason to want a primarily subscription-based platform. My money, if I had my druthers, I'd want to see Nvidia buy it. And while Nvidia is distracted by the AI shit, I think that the gaming being in their DNA has as much to do at this point as being a halo product for R&D and innovation that eventually will redound to not just better AI matrix multiplication, but better world models. Because modeling the world is kind of what 3D video games do. And modeling the world is also pretty much what autonomous self-driving cars have to do, and is pretty much what humanoid robotics are going to have to do. And sure, humanoid robotics that just fold laundry, or clean counters, they don't necessarily need a obscenely detailed level of world definition and rendering to accomplish the task. But you know what does is a video game for which anything less than perfection and photorealism is seen as falling short of some asymptotic goal. And so I think that there is a certain aspirational quality to video game design and development that even if the games themselves don't make a fortune or aren't worth the full attention of the company, could lead to the next $1 trillion in NVIDIA's evaluation down the road. And so strategically, figuring out how to take the just absolute gigantic bucket of money that they've, manifested in the last 18 months to 2 years, figuring out how to walk and chew gum at the same time by having like a video game studio like that takes that seriously. I don't know. That's interesting. We've also not seen NVIDIA hardware in console video games for a long ass time, with the exception of the Nintendo Switch and the Switch 2. And that's the kind of hardware that's more about the like portability and like, you know, how much can you get by with a very, very low power envelope. And of course, it's a miracle that like, you know, Switch 2 can run DLSS of any form, even if it's a light minimal one. But yeah, you could just imagine an NVIDIA backed console and it would probably be pretty fucking rad. So that's my main hope. The one that makes the most sense from this is a bad idea, but I could see them doing it anyway, is probably Netflix, where Netflix keeps trying to break into games, but like the library just isn't there. And because they are a library company trying to win eyeballs, having something like Minecraft be part of Netflix. It's not necessarily about integration into other Netflix properties so much as just the amount of time that you're on there and have it be tied to your Netflix subscription. And then having the opportunity for the next Minecraft, just by virtue of the number of at-bats that you are afforded by having a whole bunch of software studios cranking out games. And if you can just break even on the other games in terms of like, then it's part of your backlog, it's part of your library, and then all of that becomes value add from Netflix's perspective. Whereas everyone else, it's like a hits business, and they can't actually make the financials work when all they need is hits. which is exactly how Microsoft got into this trouble in the first place. Not to mention the fact that if Satya sells this thing, he's going to get a big infusion of cash, and then he can just funnel that straight into more AI shit, and I'm sure the market would love it. So that's your video game minute, I guess. Let's talk recommendations. As it happens, most of my recommendations are Japan stuff. There's a show called Rebooting on English language Netflix. It's called Brush Up Life in Japanese, which brush up is apparently like a colloquialism. They say wase ego, like ego means English, wase means Japanese made. There are a lot of like English loan words that actually never existed in English that were just invented in Japan. Brush up, you brush up on a skill, but that doesn't necessarily mean like to level up. So it's a time loop show about a woman who dies, spoiler alert, but then she comes back and has an opportunity to like live life better next time. And what does that mean? And it's about reincarnation, and that makes it sound heavier than it is, but it's actually like really fucking funny. And as a slice of life show to see kind of like what's it like to be living in Japan through different eras, because you get to see her life repeat several times. It's really good. Strongly recommend. Only slightly less of a recommend, but not by much. A show called Straight to Hell. This is another Japanese drama based on a true story of a woman who was wild ass famous when I lived here in 2005 and had a TV show where she was a fortune teller. She charts her entire life of how she kind of became a very successful businesswoman / con artist, depending on how you look at it, after being raised during the post-war period and going through some hard shit. Great show. It's got a really interesting kind of like flash forward, flash back sort of motif throughout as we're kind of like, excavating this woman's life history through the lens of a woman writing a biography of her. So check that one out. Third one, I don't know if this one is available in outside Japan's Netflix, but the translation is You Can't Expense This, about a normal fucking kaisha company, the 1010 Soap Corporation, where the star of the show is a middle level employee in the accounting department, and she gets expense reports, and she makes people correct their expense reports. And when things don't add up, she investigates what the fuck is going on with this person's expense report, because she's got a Japanese level of dedication to her duties. This is a show that absolutely could not work anywhere else. It's in terms of workplace drama, it's not like, I wouldn't say they knock it out of the park, but like the formula is fun. It's sort of like every episode is kind of a little bit like a puzzle, or almost has a lot of the similar beats to like a courtroom drama, except the investigation is trying to figure out like, oh, is she buying a camera and then using it on personal time? And like, did she fill out the appropriate paperwork and get the approvals to do that? Right. So, I know I'm really selling it here, but that's pretty great. If you don't want to watch a show, but you want to drive around Japan, I played a bit of Forza Horizon 6, where you get to drive around Japan. I don't know. It is simultaneously really, really good and well done and beautiful, and just like not interesting. I don't know what to do. I have not been that enthralled with really any games lately. I've been up all night with my buddy Claude, just building language apps. This is the longest break I've taken, is talking to you today for a couple hours. Honestly, like my favorite games right now are games that I can play while in between Claude turns. So if I got like 4 different terminals open with different agents and they're all working on different code, they're all cooking and they need a few minutes. So I'll play some Cook Serve Delicious where like you work as a short order cook on like turning around orders from customers really quickly to make pancakes or whatever the fuck. And it made me realize that like as a programmer in this cursed age that we live in, we have all become short order cooks. So it's like literally just like whether or not I'm answering questions in a grill me survey with Codex, or arguing with Claude, or testing out an app, or burning somebody's hamburger or tenderizing their chicken fillet. It's like all basically like that's a consistent sort of experience in terms of like what my day looks like. And so I find that Cook Serve Delicious is a copacetic game for my just absolutely wretched lifestyle here. And of course, I can't recommend it because I haven't seen it, but a lot of you have probably gotten to see The Odyssey, which is out in the US and most of the Western world right now. It does not come out in Japan until September 11th, which I don't know if that's some sort of payback for them getting really mad about the Barbenheimer thing, where they like made light of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs and also then released the movie basically on their anniversary with all the Barbie marketing and social media. Like people here were not thrilled about that. So the fact that like Chris Nolan's next movie comes out on 9/11, I don't know. But they got like a 2-month delay and that sucks. So Japan, it turns out, only has 2 screens that are like the proper IMAX format, like the right aspect ratio, and both are digital. And neither have opened ticket sales yet. And we'll probably be just about coming home around then. So part of me has it in mind that like maybe the last thing we do before heading home is go see Odyssey in IMAX. Because I presume by mid-September it's like not going to be a thing in the US, but who knows? As you might expect, I have not gotten a lot of emails, and the emails that I did get as it pertains to the podcast are now woefully out of date. So send me some fresh shit. If it's good shit, maybe I'll do another one of these episodes before too long, but only when I feel like it. But honestly, like I don't know, I like to hear from you. You know, life is too lonely. Life is extra lonely when like you're the only person around who speaks the language that you're most comfortable in. I do have a wife. She's here too, and we're spending a lot of time together, and it's been wonderful. But I love to get a little bit more stimulation and interaction with you. You specifically. Just you. Just email me. Do it. Do it now. Pull over. podcast@searles.co.
You've got mail.
Yeah, so just 2 quick emails. Tom writes in, "Hello, I was just thinking how much I miss your podcast. Your honest, often cynical takes, hey." I don't know if I'm going to keep going. "Your honest, often cynical takes on technology is what I miss the most. Not because I found them amusing, but because it felt nice to hear someone who feels the same way and can articulate it far better than I ever will. Don't sell yourself short, Tom. Just be madder all the time until it just seeps into your bones, and then you can't stop it. Like a bone cancer." All right, Tom continues, "I completely understand why you went on a content hiatus, but I also hope you'll go back to sharing your opinions at some point in the future. Have a nice day or night or wherever you are. I hope it's Japan." Correct, and here I am. Thanks, Tom. Be well. Write in again. Let's see. Beat writes, "Hi. I miss new episodes, really. Cheers. Beat." Thanks, Beat. All right, well, here's one. That's all I got. Yeah, I don't know what I'm supposed to say because I don't know if and when I'm going to do another one of these. Like, I don't want to commit to like a roughly every 2-week cadence, but I also don't want you to worry that I've died. So why don't we all just assume I've died, and then if I come back to life, we'll have something interesting to talk about.